You know, there's a really interesting story in there somewhere where you get a guy that gathered and forced 42 students to battle to the death, and then you hand him a futuristic anti-terrorist group. Where's that movie? So Ghost in the Shell is the 2017 live-action adaptation of the 1995 Japanese anime, which in itself is based on a 1989 Japanese comic book. And it tells the story of Major, played by Scarlett Johansson, who is the world's first mechanical body powered by a human brain instead of an AI. She's the leader of this group Section 9, which is an anti-terrorist group in the future, and they're working to take down this cyber terrorist. First off, guys, I gotta tell you, I have never seen the original Ghost in the Shell movie. I've never watched any of the animes, never read any of the comics, so I walked into this movie 100% fresh, 100% blind. I didn't watch too many of the trailers aside from the one that I reacted to, so I really didn't get much of an idea of the story of this movie, the direction. All I knew was how wild this world looked, and Scarlett Johansson, somewhat controversially, was cast as Major. Ghost in the Shell is a name and a property that I have heard about my entire life. I've never really been a fan of anime, so I pretty much knew I was never going to watch those original movies, so I was excited and intrigued to finally experience this story for the first time. Starting off with the positives, above anything else, the top of the list, this movie looks incredible. From the opening credits of this movie, when it's showing you the creation of Major, Scarlett Johansson's character, you get an idea immediately that this movie is going for broke with its visuals. It's very visually stunning. It's beautiful the way the special effects come together to really complement the story and to flesh out this world and this environment that you're about to spend the next 2 hours in Ghost in the Shell.
Section 9 is currently on site. Repeat, all patrolling air units be advised. Possible cyber crime.
This is Major. I'm on site.
All of your acting in Ghost in the Shell is pretty good across the board. Scarlett Johansson always delivers really well, especially in an action franchise like this. I had a little bit of trouble kind of connecting with her character throughout the movie, at least in the first half, because she is very robotic, but that's part of the character. So if that was the intention, she definitely delivered on that part of her performance. The emotional aspects of her character do kick in a lot more in the second half, though, so there is a little bit of a redemption there. Just the first half, to me, I was like, I don't really know if I'm getting this character too much. My favorite performance in this movie was Juliette Binoche. She's pretty much the one who created Major, and she has this very interesting dynamic of this mother-daughter relationship while also having this creator-creation relationship. And it's really interesting the way that they kind of blend those two, because she's very nurturing, she's very loving towards Major, but at the same time, she's doing things mechanical to her brain and erasing memories. There's definitely this man and machine dynamic in their relationship, but it's also sprinkled throughout with this maternal love. And it made their relationship and their dynamic much more interesting and actually elevated both of their characters when you're watching this movie. Everyone else in this movie, from the villains to the side characters, they were all pretty serviceable. Nobody did a bad job. Nobody really stood out. Part of it was because the movie didn't dedicate too much time to anybody else's character except for Major and Juliette Binoche's character. But one character who did have a really interesting change in his dynamic about halfway through the movie was the chief who is in charge of Section 9. Throughout the first half of this movie or so, he's basically just the guy on the other end of the walkie-talkie, telling him what to do, telling him what not to do. There wasn't really anything interesting to him other than the fact that you're going to recognize this actor. But halfway through the movie, when shit starts to hit the fan, you see how powerful and how badass this guy really is. And if we do in fact get a Ghost in the Shell sequel, or they continue this story in any way in a live-action form, I hope he comes back, because I want to see more about his character. He really intrigued me. One other thing that I really appreciated about Ghost in the Shell, despite a lot of its familiarities, which I'll get into here shortly, I like the way that they told this story. It was a little bit more of a slow burn. It was a little bit more intrigue and mystery than I expected. I figured it was going to be slam bang sci-fi action the entire runtime, and it's not. It's much more of a slow burn, just slowly marinating through this story, slowly peeling back the onion of this mystery, and it was really intriguing. While I did kind of see some things coming, the path that they took to get there was really interesting. Rupert Sanders is the director of this, and the only major movie he's directed before this is Snow White and the Huntsman, so it really surprises me how well he pulled off the job of director in Ghost in the Shell and delivering a lot of these visuals. I already talked a little bit on some of them, but there are some really crazy shots in this, which also leads me to really praise his cinematography cinematographer, because there are some things that really stuck with me as far as visuals, especially one that I really keep thinking about, where they kind of uncover this human hive mind little collection of people. They're sitting all around in a circle, and they all got their brains strapped into this gigantic wire mass. And that was just a wicked visual. When you first walk in, you're like, whoa, what the hell is that? Now, as far as the negatives in Ghost in the Shell, this is a small negative, and that's why I'm going to start off with it first, but the action scenes, to me, while they are very competently directed, they do look cool. There's no shaky cam or any of those amateur things that I can't stand about today's action scenes. They aren't really all that impressive. Part of that's due to the fact that the main focus of this movie isn't the action scenes. Part of it's maybe on an action choreography that's not really got a whole lot of experience. And a major part of that is this movie's coming out a little bit over a month after John Wick Chapter 2, so any movie's gonna have trouble impressing me with gunplay and hand-to-hand combat. Just a fact. But the main negative that I walked away with from Ghost in the Shell, like I've already said, this is based on a 1995 film that's based off a 1989 Japanese comic. So all of the original ideas that were in that original comic, and even still original when they came out with that 1995 anime film, are no longer original. You can see where that original comic or even that 1995 anime could have influenced a lot of the major sci-fi action movies that we all remember from years ago, like The Matrix, but when you look at it as a new story in 2017, it's an old story. It's old story elements. There's elements in this that's basically focusing on where do you draw the line between humanity and cybernetic organism, and that's something that was already explored in 1982's Blade Runner. You get a lot of the aspects of The Matrix, like I was already saying. So even though there is some original elements to that original story when it first came out, it's way, way, way past its time by the time we see it now in 2017. And that's what made a lot of the story beats, a lot of the reveals, and where this movie really went in the end, very familiar and very predictable.
Everything they told you was a lie.
Who are you?
There was not really any surprises in this movie to me. I knew where everything was coming from. I knew Major was probably going to find out about her origin. I knew she was probably going to switching some sides here and there, and at the very end I figured where the movie was going to end up in its very end scene. So to me, a lot of the elements of this, and the reason why it's brought so low down, is because this movie's a little bit too late past its prime. I understand that when they're adapting something that's as beloved as Ghost in the Shell, they wanted to stick to the story as closely as possible and keep a lot of the original story elements, a lot of the reveals, a lot of the directions that the story goes, but I think it would have made a lot more for a better film now in 2017 if they had taken a lot more liberties with the story, if they had taken their time and come up with much more of an original take on the Ghost in the Shell instead of just a straight up adaptation, because most of the reception I've seen for this movie already is that no matter what, the animated movie is going to be a lot better, a lot more deep, and much less of a shell. I've seen that word a lot. But there's just not really anything relevant in 2017 that this movie's trying to say. It's already been said numerous times in much better movies. And that's really a shame because, like I said, a lot of the technical aspects of this movie are just masterfully done. Like the special effects, everybody really does a good job in the acting. There could have been a few more times with some other characters. This probably could have been a little bit longer of a movie. It is pretty short, 2 hours. And when the end came, I was like, it's already over? That's a little crazy. So it does fly by. That is another positive I didn't really talk about, is the pace of the movie. It's just, in the end, I'm not really walking away with anything overly memorable or overly impactful in me aside from a few visual cues. So to wrap all this up, guys, Ghost in the Shell is a good movie. It's a good entertaining time at the theater. You got some good performances, some really cool characters, and some amazing visuals, but the overall aspect of the story, the overall impact of the story, and the overall memorable side of this story of Ghost in the Shell is just not there in this adaptation. It's way too late. They should have adapted it either much more differently and added a lot more new elements to it, or they should have brought this movie to us 10 or 15 years ago. So if you're interested in checking out Ghost in the Shell and you don't already own the animated movie, go ahead and go out to the theaters, check out this new adaptation, but save a few bucks and check it out at a matinee. So what do you guys think of Ghost in the Shell? Are you a fan of the original Japanese comic or the 1995 animated movie? How does this movie compare to those? Do you like this one better, or is it a shell of its original film? Go ahead and put all of your thoughts on Ghost in the Shell, Scarlett Johansson's performance, and whether or not you think we're going to get any more Ghost in the Shell movies down in the comment section below, and we'll talk about it. Please like and share this video, and hit that subscribe button. That way you get to come back and see me next time. But if that's not soon enough to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.